got some staff and some folks. We're partnering on this effort. We'll get into it, but let's give you a little bit of background. We're partnering on this effort with the East Central Florida Regional Planning Council. It's a group from Orlando that was created by statute, I believe. Florida statute has created our regional planning councils. And they provide a level of expertise that a lot of smaller communities don't have, such as Canaveral. So we've asked them to get involved with us, and they've been doing a lion's share of the work. And they're here, obviously, this evening, and they'll be available for questions and answers. But again, this evening, where we are, what's got us here this evening? I want to make this very clear. This is the first step in many steps to remedy the situation that we're in. And this situation has been building and climbing for a number of years. As most of you know, the city was incorporated back in the early 60s, and the city has changed a great deal since then. Our land use patterns have changed. Astronaut Boulevard came along and drew a lot of commercial development over onto Astronaut off of North Atlantic. So a lot of things have changed in the last 50 years. And what's happened is a lot of the properties that we have, in particular along the North Atlantic corridor, which we all know where that is, really from the south end of the city all the way up to the port. A lot of that property is zoned commercial. And you can see this from these maps. Commercial is shown in red. See a lot of the red and the pinks all up and down here. Actually, let's look at that one. That's the existing one. You can see the reds and the pinks, and the purples are industrial. We're not really worried about this. It seems like this North Atlantic corridor, really the entire thing is commercial. And as you know, we have a lot of single-family homes and duplexes in this corridor. And the problem is these properties that are zoned commercial but built residentially have become over time what is called non-conforming. That means the commercial zoning district does not permit or allow residential structures. It used to, throughout the years it used to, back in 2016, so about 3 years ago, the city went through and really revamped its permitted use and special exception, what was allowed where, basically. And it changed in 2016. Residential uses were no longer allowed in commercial districts. So that created what's called a non-conforming structures, or these residential uses are non-conforming. Which means, in some situations, if a non-conforming structure, in this case, if a house was destroyed somehow, fire, hurricane, whatever the case may be, in certain situations, it couldn't be rebuilt. City code says non-conforming structures cannot be rebuilt. And that's obviously a huge problem. Because we sent out, I'll be with you in just a second.
Why did they change it?
We'll get there. We'll get there. Good question. Good question. So we've identified 750 properties in the city that are in this situation. They're either developed with residential structures, or it's vacant commercial in areas surrounded by residential commercial areas. So a perfect example. Any of you live on Oak Lane? I know I've got some Oak Lane folks here. Perfect example. Oak Lane right here. All zone commercial. Entire thing zone commercial. And then if you've ever been back on Oak Lane, there's no commercial back there. It's all residential. So that's a problem. And we've got a number of, I'll call subdivisions in the same situation around the city. So we've got to come up with a fix. And that's why we're here tonight. This is the first step, as I said. Let me step you through the process real quick. I know, you didn't come here to listen to me talk, but.
Yeah, we did.
The process is, as I said, first step tonight. This is really just hey, this is the situation, this is how we're proposing to fix it. The next step will be to go to our planning and zoning board. We're gonna have this conversation this evening. We're gonna listen to what you have to say. If any of you have any issues with what we're proposing, this is your opportunity to talk to us and let us know your thoughts. Nothing's cast in concrete yet, so I want to make that very clear. I don't want anybody leaving tonight going, oh my gosh, I can't believe the city's doing that, and they're railroading me that I don't have anything to say about this. That is not the case. This is why we're here talking. So, based on our input we get tonight, the next step is go to our planning and zoning board. And that's a board of lay citizens. There's 7 people on the board. And they will hold a public hearing. And there will be another opportunity at that meeting for the public to come and speak to what's being discussed. Now, anything that goes to the planning and zoning board well in advance of that meeting will be available for anyone to look at and to review and to have comment on. So there's going to be nothing that is sprung on anybody at the last minute. This is all going to be a lengthy, deliberate process. So, we will be doing what's called a rezoning. We're also going to have to go through another process concurrently with that. It's a comprehensive plan amendment. We don't need to get into all that stuff. That gets off into some technical deep water. But the issue I really want everyone to understand is we're going to be rezoning properties that need to be rezoned because of the issue that I mentioned. So we're going to go to the P&Z meeting, and that'll be fully noticed. We'll mail out notices just like we did for this meeting, so there's going to be no surprises. Everybody will be aware of it. And P&Z, the Planning and Zoning Board, will conduct a public hearing, and they'll make a recommendation at the end of the meeting. Maybe they'll hold 2 or 3 meetings. Don't know how long this is going to take. So, at the end of when the P&Z board is ready to make a recommendation, they'll do that, and then it will move to the city council. And the city council will then consider it. Essentially go through the same process that the planning and zoning board goes through. They'll have public hearings and allow people to come in and speak. And those are typically handled, because a rezoning is handled through an ordinance. An ordinance requires 2 hearings in front of the city council. So they typically happen in consecutive months, January, February, April, May, whatever the case is going to be. So, point is, there's going to be 3 public hearings at a minimum before anything's finalized. So there's going to be lots of opportunities for folks to talk and have input. Okay, that's an important point I want to make. I know I keep beating that drum, but that's an important point. The other point I want to keep pounding on is nothing set in concrete. We're here talking. This is a discussion. This is a dialogue. That's the other important thing I want to make. So, anyways, what was your question again?
Why did you change it in 2016?
Good question. What happened is, as you can see, this commercial area was a lot.
Was that created after the residences were built?
No, and that's the problem. This came from one of the original. This is back in '62 or '63 when the city first came up with its zoning plan. This hasn't changed. All these homes were built in commercial. Very early '60s, so I think it was at that time. But what I can tell you is today the problem is we've got homes and businesses all mixed in amongst themselves, and that's just not good planning. For the reasons I mentioned earlier, Oak Lane's a perfect example, and that happens throughout the city. So we're here to fix it. Yes, ma'am.
Jim Morgan was our councilman. Rocky was our mayor. We had an ordinance passed. Anything that is on your property as of that ordinance can remain.
That's
Whether
true.
it's fire, flood, hurricane. So if you own a piece of property right now in Canaveral, to the best of my understanding, if you have that property, and many of our properties are not conforming use. It's just the way the city is.
Right.
And as it stands today, we do have an ordinance protecting us, saying that whatever is on that property today can be rebuilt according, not to the new structures to the same amount of area that you had when this ordinance was passed. Are you planning on changing that?
I think that's already been changed.
When? I'd like to see the zoning.
Okay,
the
sure.
Amendment of that zoning.
Rather than,
Because I've never gotten a letter on it.
okay, there's a lot of things that have changed that the city hasn't done. I'm gonna just lay our cards on the table here, everybody. There's a lot of things that have changed that that probably weren't advertised as well as they should have been.
Yeah, the 16 change was one of them.
Yes, yes. And, you know, I can't speak to a lot of stuff that happened in the past. What I can tell you is, right now, I get a lot of phone calls from appraisers, from underwriters, from homeowners who are trying to sell their property or get a refinance on their property. And they ask me, can that property be rebuilt? And my answer is no.
So when was it changed?
And guess what happens to that appraisal?
I know.
Goes in
When
the
was
tank.
it changed? My question is, when was that ordinance changed? Because this was only done in the last 6 years. So when was that new ordinance changed?
2016.
And Morgan was it?
We'll put it, a good question. We'll put that online so you guys can all see that. And then, that's a good point. I see your hands, I'll get to you in just a second. We have a city webpage. If all of you are familiar with our city webpage, there is a page on our city webpage that we've created. It's been in existence for, I don't know, a month or so. We've been loading a lot of documents onto that already, so there's certain information that's available currently. But the stuff that we're talking about tonight, we're going to start uploading a lot of that stuff, so you can see and be made aware. And if anybody has any questions, you can call me. Where's Brenda? I don't think all the fun. Brenda's back there too. We'll take as much time as we need to sit and meet with each of you one-on-one, if that's what you like, to talk about it. But yes.
Yeah, I was wondering, as a possible solution, have you ever thought about introducing mixed-use zoning to our mix here, where people can live in one portion and have a business in the next portion? Or
Yeah.
any potential to do that?
We are going to do that. We actually have a draft mixed-use ordinance that we're going to be bringing to the council. I can't tell you exactly when, but we've already drafted one up. That will address a certain amount of that, what we're talking about here, Ray. But a lot of these homes are on very small lots that really don't lend themselves to mixed use. But mixed use is a great alternative for certain situations, and we've drafted one, or actually Brenda's drafted one up. Gentleman over here on the walls.
I've owned my property since '63, and it's always been zoned residential commercial. That's what it looks like on the tax statement. Has that changed?
Yeah, the property appraiser has its own classifications and designations, which are completely separate from what the city uses. This is the important map right here. We really don't have what I would call a mixed or a split zoning. You're either residential or you're commercial. So yeah, that can get confusing if you look at what's on the property appraiser's your annual.
I mean, it's been like that since
Yeah.
I bought it.
Yeah, that can be confusing. Yes, sir.
We live in Banyan Cove. Could you tell us kind of where that, across the street?
Across the street
From here, Riverside, directly across the street. Condos.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And it looks like it goes commercial and then R3 in the middle
It's
of it.
split.
Can you tell me approximately where that is?
I can probably not right now. If you want to call me tomorrow, what I can do is, I'm sure, my guess is that there may be two parcels that make up that property, and probably is following parcel lines. If not, I can,
There are two parcels.
yeah, probably following the parcel line. That typically is what happens. So generally, in your situation, probably the stuff closer to the river is residential.
Right.
So if you can if you can get on the property appraiser's website and see where your property is in relation to that property line, then that'll
a situation where it might end up being mixed use would be storage units with a live-on property for the people managing the property. Okay, just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, and that would be, that would fall into that mixed use zoning district that we're in the process of creating. Something like what you're talking about. Perfect example.
Yep.
Yes, sir.
I apologize for getting a couple minutes late. Parking was kind of difficult, and I hate to say it, but if we spend a little more money on building a bigger parking area and more lively, we might have several of us might have had a better opportunity for parking, but anyhow.
What's your question? I'm sorry.
Yes, my question is, I live 111 Lincoln Avenue, one of the brightest yellow townhouses, I've been in it for 5.5 years.
I'm sorry, okay.
And you're telling me that if that building structure goes down in a storm, that I can't rebuild as the house it is today? Is that, this lady here was saying that we can, and you're saying, from what I'm hearing, no.
Are you in a townhouse?
Yes, sir.
Then no.
Then no. So I've been paying insurance for all these years to rebuild and all, and yet you're saying I'm not allowed to, so we have a problem here.
We do have a problem. That's why we're here to fix it tonight. I mean, I'm not gonna sugarcoat anything for you.
Who authorized this,
Who authorized what?
the change?
The city council approved the ordinance.
All city council members live in Cape Canaveral?
They sure do.
Well, that's a good thing.
When did they make the change?
2016.
Why?
What was the purpose?
Okay, I'm starting to go. I don't want to get out of control here.
Why is it that?
Oh, listen, one at a time.
One thing I've always been interested for our city is a historic district overlay. Are any of these properties here would be considered historic? I know like there's the old artesian post office, and I don't know if that's included or not, but has there been any discussion about like a historic district overlay that includes some properties that may be historic and achieve certain protections?
Yeah, to my knowledge, there's been no I'll call it serious conversation about or discussion about creating a historic overlay. No. So, let's see, I know there's a number, I started to see people talking. Who else had a question?
Still going back to
You
why,
were-
did you give a reason why they changed it back then?
Back,
In 2016, what was the, what were they looking for, what was the benefit, why did they create this situation?
because we had a lot of non-conforming properties next to each other. And we were having a lot of,
That created
We
more.
have 75% of them not
Right, the
conforming.
2016 change created more non-conforming properties.
no, it started the process to fix the problem. This is not gonna fix itself overnight. This is a 20, 30, 40-year process that we're starting, to this fix.
Excuse me.
Okay.
Can I have the ordinance for 2016?
Yeah,
You
well,
must have that. Can I have it?
I'm gonna load it to the website
No,
tomorrow.
I'm not computer friendly. Can I have the code, please?
I think it's 2016-02 is the ordinance number. But don't hold me to that one. Is that correct?
July 2016.
Wow. There you go. And if you can get on this, if you are challenged with respect to computers, just come in here tomorrow and ask for me and I'll get you a copy of it.
council meeting, and we voted on it. And we voted to approve it. Is that gonna discontinue that kind of a meeting?
No, this is exactly what I was trying to describe. I did a poor job of that, I'm sorry. Let me restate that. Before anything is rezoned, which you're talking about a rezoning process. And then
It wasn't a rezoning, it was building a commercial. See, that's zone residential commercial. And I've always been of the opinion that you can build either residential or commercial.
Mixed use.
I think you could tear my place down and build another Circle K there. That's why I wasn't opposed to it, because I thought something I might want to build a Circle K.
yeah, if the 7-Eleven is that is the property up here on North Atlanta. Yeah, that's zoned commercial.
It's not residential commercial.
That's a county tax designation,
Yeah.
it's not a zoning designation.
Right, it's two separate things. You're getting don't disregard what your property your tax bill says. That's not city zoning. That's the county property appraiser's designation. That's a completely separate thing.
Well,
It always
now
used-
you confuse me.
It always,
Well,
sir,
call.
it always used to be, if you had commercial property, you could always downgrade it to what they say residential. But if you had residential property, very rarely, I've never, in the 50 years I've been building around here, never heard of somebody taking residential property and making it commercial. So basically what you're saying is, that's why those things were approved back then.
Well, it's zone residential commercial.
Residential
Residential/commercial.
For the 38 years or so I've been building in Canaveral, I've never heard of that.
Yeah, that type of zoning has never existed in the city. No, commercial, a split zoning, residential commercial. Okay,
Wait, we have three. I guess you would call it, there's Portside Villas, Ocean Gardens, Anchorage Avenue.
Uh-huh.
So you've got three different condominium.
All zone commercial.
What happens to the people that live there and bought?
Technically, today,
Yes.
if I'm gonna,
And the latest of those was made in 2006.
I'll answer that. I'll answer that in two ways.
Why can't we amend the amendment of 2016 so it no longer exists? If you could, it's not you, the power of the city. If the power of the city said, we are going to not uphold the amendment of 2010 when Mr. Morgan was here, and that in 2016 they made a new ordinance, because these are just ordinances. These
Yes,
aren't like
that's right.
real laws.
Yeah, that's right.
Ordinances.
The council
They're
can,
make believe. So why can't we as a community, right, go to our city lawyer and ask them to amend this amendment of 2002 and put it back to the way it was in 2010? And then we
yes,
should.
that's certainly an option. And if 3 of the 5 city council want to do that, then we can all go home.
I'm with you. Let's try it.
I'm not suggesting that. I'm saying that's an option. I believe this more than 50% of our building in our city, 1.9 square miles, that is non-conforming use. How much do you believe is non-conforming use in our city? I know there's 750 parcels.
All right, so we're 1.9 square miles.
I don't have that number right
Well,
here. I just know it's,
You're in zoning. This is like, ABC.
I just,
Can we move on?
yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think we're.
I want my answer.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
I said that there were 3 condominiums.
Yes,
What do we
Okay.
have?
I got sidetracked.
Yes, do
Technic,
that now.
okay, technically, by code, what would happen is, if those, let's just take for one of those projects, if it burned down tonight. The code, it's a non-conforming structure, technically by the code, and our code says if it's a non-conforming structure, if it's destroyed, cannot be rebuilt.
Okay, I'm with her, let's go back to what was.
However, let me finish.
I can't hear only one person at a time, please.
So that's what we're here to talk. We're fixing it. We're fixing the situation. Now, I'm going to say this. Remember I said I had two responses for you? The first response, that was my technical response.
Can you speak louder so we can hear him?
Yeah.
Quiet, you can hear. Stay quiet for you, but come on.
That was my, okay, okay, let's all be quiet. That was my technical response. My practical reality response, what would happen was the city council could adopt an emergency ordinance and let everything get rebuilt while we're fixing this problem. So please don't go away thinking, oh my gosh, if my property burns down tonight, I'm left out in the cold and I don't have any, there's no remedy for me. That's not the case. The city council has ways to remedy this situation, and you're not going to be without a house, you're not going to be without a condo project, it's going to be nothing like that. So, is everybody very clear about what I just said?
Yes.
Okay. So I don't want anybody walking around trying to throw scare tactics out. Oh, we can't rebuild. That's not the case. We will make way. We will make.
But in the meantime, you're telling insurance companies and
Yes.
banks
Yes.
the negative of that.
That is correct.
Well,
But I'm also telling them that we're putting a fix in place.
but it also sounds like there was some extremely poor management that led the whole situation.
Well, actually, I would disagree with that. I'd say there's some what's happened is over time there's been a lack of leadership and lack of management, and over time the problem's been created and building, and we have leadership now, and we have vision who's willing to grab the bull by the horns and deal with a tough situation that's been building for 20 plus years. That's, if you want to go there, that's my response to that. Yes, sir.
Let me summarize my understanding of two goals we might have here tonight. To fix deficiencies in the 16 thing like the lady wants, primarily is going to fix that, while we address the longer term vision of zoning for what is today and what we hope it is in the future. Is that a fair summary?
Yeah, this is an opportunity for the city to really take a look at how we grow, how we develop, and to recognize past development patterns and how things have changed over 50 years. We haven't done that. The city has not comprehensively looked at itself.
But this effort will address 16.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I would like to thank you for having the courage to stand up in front of me. And I appreciate it.
Nice building.
Gentlemen, I allowed you to speak, give me the opportunity to speak. I'd like you to show us your thoughts on how to fix it. Can we do that?
Yeah.
Let's move forward.
I mean, if you, I know it's not particularly easy, but if you look at these two maps, it's really where we are today versus, as proposed, where we want to go. And essentially what this map does is recognize how the city has changed since we became a city. We haven't done that. If you look at the zoning map, I think I mentioned this, but I hope I'm not too repetitive. If you look at a zoning map from 1965, it looks almost identical to this. Almost identical, parcel for parcel. These parcels here shown in yellow have been built, developed, inconsistent with the zoning map, without zone. So this map here is recognizing how the city has grown over we're suggesting is we update our zoning map to reflect who we are as a city, how we've grown. And to deal with these conflicting zoning areas. Oak Lane is my go-to example. Technically, if somebody wanted to go in there and buy one of those parcels and erect a attorney's office, which is allowed under the C1 district, they may be able to do that. And if I were living on Oak Lane, I sure as heck wouldn't want that. And there's situation after situation I can point to that exactly.
I have a question.
I'll get to you next.
We recently just bought down here, and the condos were built in the eighties, and maybe I was a little bit late because couldn't find a parking spot, I had to park on top of a Honda. But my question is, in the eighties, was our property zoned residential? Otherwise, they would have not allowed those properties to be built.
Not completely correct. What happened is, back when the city was zoned commercial, there was a provision in the zoning code that allowed residential in the commercial zoning district through what's called a special exception process. And that's how, like the homes on Oak Lane. How did that happen? Well, there was a special exception approved. And that's historically been that way until 2016, when the council said, okay, no more special exceptions in commercial. It's just exacerbating the
So
problem.
our taxes that we're paying, zone commercial, but we're residential, are different than it should be.
My understanding, and I don't want to speak on behalf of the property appraiser, but I've dealt with this issue in other communities I've worked in and worked with other property appraisers. My understanding of what the property appraiser does is they tax according to how a property is used versus how it's zoned.
Sure, that's what they're gonna say.
Now, I don't-
Question for you.
Okay,
I have a property that has a residential upstairs and a commercial downstairs,
yes,
and they send me a picture every year
yes.
to put, this is,
Are you the lady I spoke with over here? The furniture store downstairs?
yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so I talked with the county, I talked to her, so I am taxed for a commercial rate on the downstairs
Mhm.
and a residential rate on the upstairs.
Because it's used
And the
that way.
commercial rate is cheaper than the residential rate.
Wow.
So,
Yes, period.
well,
That's,
that's the
You
point.
can ask them, you can ask them. Commercial is cheaper than residential.
I
swear by it, you can sue me, but that's
Oh.
what, that's what Nicholas told me before he died, that's the way it was.
well, we can, that'll be a question we can answer. And we'll,
Okay, you can ask that, 'cause that's the truth about what you're gonna
yes,
ask.
sir.
Okay. I'll throw out a little insight, what I think is
Okay.
going on.
All right.
Back when the city of Cape Canaveral implemented zoning, state law requires all non-conforming existing structures to be grandfathered. Saying,
That's the case.
with the contention that if it were to be destroyed, you'd have to comply with the zoning.
With the current zone, yes, that was right.
I don't see why you couldn't apply to have it rezoned at the time to begin with.
Why you couldn't apply to get it rezoned to residential at the time?
Right, the problem here is there's too many residences on commercial property.
Mhm.
They need to be zoned residential, but they were grandfathered in back then.
See,
So
I think the.
rezoning them residential is fine,
Mhm.
but you also have businesses that are on commercial property that are being made into residential property, and you're gonna put those businesses out of business.
We're not proposing to rezone any piece of property that has an existing business on it. No.
There's one right here.
Then that's why we're here tonight. Talk to me, maybe not right this second, but talk to me and we'll take a look at it, and if it's, just like this lady here I spoke with, she showed
One
me.
more comment, the ordinance that was passed in 2016, that wasn't a new zoning ordinance. That was a building ordinance, city code type ordinance, designating what you can build based upon the zoning. And I think it also removed the clause of, it basically basically stated there's no such thing as unbuildable lot. See, taking that.
Yeah, I mean,
They dealt with building, how much building you put on a parcel.
I don't have my glasses on. I can't see anything. Yeah, that's basically, are those readers? That's basically the case. Just had one. Special except, yeah, July 19th, 2016, I think that's what, Councilman Morrison mentioned. Yeah, but we'll put that up on the city webpage, in the next day or two. Yeah, that is.
So was it an ordinance, or was it an ordinance?
Yes, it was an ordinance.
I thought an ordinance needed 3 open meetings.
It went through that entire process. It went to our planning and zoning board, they held a public hearing, then it went to the city council 2 separate times, and those were both public hearings, so there was 3 total public hearings. Yes, ma'am?
I've lived here since 1988, and Murphy and Bennett's were the ones that built our places. And so, I thought it was residential, so is it now being considered commercial?
Well, I mean, we've got 2 different things going on a lot of times. In these 750 properties, we've got 2 different things. We've got how a piece of property is zoned versus how a piece of property is actually used. And these 750 properties that we've identified, there's a conflict between the 2.
So is it basically, did the people down here in the city turn and look the other direction?
Actually, no, I think we were staring right down the gun barrel and saying,
No, back in my time.
oh, I don't know what they, what do you think, when you say they stared, they looked in a different direction?
I'm talking that it's,
Allowing structures to.
allow them to go ahead and build it and just look the other direction.
Oh, I see what
and
you're
say,
saying. Okay.
Yeah, you can go ahead and build it.
Well, what I mentioned earlier is, for a long time, I don't know when this practice started, but I can find out. The city said you can put a residential structure in a commercial zoning district if you get what's called a special exception approval. And that's what's happened in a lot of cases. Is the city granted special exceptions to allow these residential uses to crop up in these commercial districts. And that's what in 2016 the city said, that's it, no more of that.
Okay,
So-
and if that's the case, and the residents didn't know about it, isn't that being a little bit deceptive?
You know, that's a tough one to answer. We have
The deception came in 2016.
It happened everywhere in every state.
yeah,
That happened.
it's you know, there's a process outlined, and I'm gonna sound like an attorney, and I hate to do it. There's a process outlined in Florida statute. Ugh, sounds horrible coming out of my mouth. That cities are required to follow in order to rezone properties. And the city followed those processes to the T. And, you know, it's a, we're going above and beyond what we're doing tonight is not required by law, but we're trying to do it right. And so, we didn't have to mail these notices out, nothing like that. But, I can't really speak to what happened in 2010 or 19, whatever. All I can do is.
1988.
Okay, 1988. I'm sorry. That's all I can say. I'm sorry you weren't aware of what was going on back then. But all I can do is say, we are taking every measure to make sure if your property's gonna get affected, and you're gonna know about it, you're gonna be involved. And if
Yeah, because I've just put a lot of money into.
well, I don't want to. Are you in a home?
I'm in town.
You're in a townhome, and so it's probably zoned commercial then if you're here. So
Well, I came here because it said, it talked about people on North Atlantic Avenue.
did you get a flyer in the mail?
Yes, I did.
Okay, then your property's probably zoned commercial. So the Point is, if it got burned down today, technically you would not be able to rebuild it. That's a problem, and we're trying to fix the problem.
But you created the problem.
Yeah, but it's not, now we have to fix it.
I
Can't go back in time. Let's be constructive.
I can't,
What do you want to do?
the problem's been being created for 50 years since the city was established. I can't point to every person who is involved in it. Like I said, all I can tell you tonight is there's a problem and I'm trying to fix it. Okay?
What's the problem with a residential property being on commercial zone?
It's a non-conforming use.
But this city created that situation.
Right, and we're trying to fix it.
Before 2016,
Okay.
it wasn't an issue, so.
I'll tell you what, why don't you call me and you and I can meet individually and we'll probably have a lot more productive conversations than here today. Yes,
What's the timetable for
Yes, that was
getting
my
us through the
Good question.
bureaucratic
Good.
process?
and it is bureaucratic. Depending on how it goes over the next couple of weeks as far as conversations and input from the residents and property owners, it could happen, remember I mentioned there's kind of three public hearings, there's two steps. The first one is planning and zoning board and then it goes to the city council. Again, it could potentially happen as quickly as late February, late next month, going to the planning and zoning board for that public hearing. And then depending on how that goes, it could go as quickly as the following month to the city council, which would be March, and then the following meeting in April. That's just the zoning side of it, okay? So, but I don't think it's gonna happen that fast. I think there's gonna be a lot more discussion, a lot more of these type of meetings, and we're gonna have an opportunity to discuss things. But theoretically, it could happen that quickly. Now, I'm gonna get technical just for a second. I know you have a lot of questions. As I mentioned earlier, we're gonna rezone property. We're gonna also do what's called a comp plan amendment. We also have to amend our comprehensive plan according to how we're gonna rezone things. The comp plan amendment process can run concurrently with the rezoning up to a point, but those amendments to the comp plan have to go to the state. They have to go to Tallahassee, and a department up there called the Department of Economic Opportunity is going to review our proposed changes and make comments, and we'll have to negotiate with the state if they come up with any issues. So that could bump it out another month or two depending on how that goes. So realistically, 5 months, 6 months, realistically.
So follow up on that same subject, sorry.
We'll get to you next.
Is it possible to be broken up, or does it have to be everything? Can we come to you as residents on our street and say, we're one community, let's get a meeting, this is what we want to do, and speed it up?
It really wouldn't be sped up at all, because we're gonna have to take the same steps no matter if it's one piece of property or 700 properties. It has to follow those same steps. Now, again, depending on, yes, if we had I'm gonna go back to Oak Lane again. If we had the Oak Lane subdivision and they're all 100% of the property owners are supportive, and we know we're not gonna have any issues, we could probably speed it through and maybe shave a month off of it. But, it's kind of like dying a thousand cuts, breaking it up and doing 10 or 15 or 20. That would just,
So
that'd be rough.
that was my follow-up question. You're gonna do the whole city at the same time, just do the whole.
Yes, sir.
What can we do to help you help us?
Educate yourselves on what's going on, and frankly, the opportunities for property owners and residents to interface with this whole process is at the planning and zoning board meeting and at the two city council meetings. Those are three formal opportunities to speak to the issue. So if you want to come to those meetings and speak, and if that's great. If you want to speak to, I don't want to encourage you to speak too much to the city council, because that could be considered ex parte communication. But, pardon? It's technical, legal stuff. Right, so, Brenda, do you have something to add to that?
I'm just gonna add that in general, we also have a weekly update where we post a number of things that are happening in the community. So if you're not signed up for that, that would be a good
trying to be as transparent as we possibly can through this process. We don't want to end up 10 years from now and this gentleman's concerns, we're back here trying to speak to those same things. How did this happen? We didn't know about it. We don't want that happening. So, great point. We look to the city newsletter, weekly updates. All of our meetings are on our Instagram pages, our Facebook pages. We try to put stuff out here on the marquees as well. A lot of these, the comp plan amendment meetings are going to be in the paper. Florida statute requires that we have these big display ads with maps and everything. We'll also be sending out notices to affected property owners. So if you're here tonight, you probably got a mailer. You'll be getting mailers in the future too, letting you know what's going on. But
Instagram account.
what's our
I think it's just, City of Cape Canaveral.
Okay.
This is actually one like transit instead of prohibits.
Yes, ma'am.
I live on a street with Adams that share the street with a car wash. So like, I was just wondering what the car wash is zoned.
My guess is the car wash is zone C1, which is commercial. And it wouldn't.
That way, is that correct?
And it'll stay that way. Yeah. If you have a business like this lady here, and it may be your situation, if you have a business on your property today, we are not going to rezone your property to residential. Please don't. That's not happening. So then come and talk to them.
I'm sure there's more than one.
I'm sure there are. That's why we're having these conversations.
How can I get on the list, because I lease from the owner of the building, she's obviously not here. How can I, get on the mailing list?
You know that sign, that's a good point. I hope everybody had a chance to sign that. Okay, then you're on the mailing list. Okay.
What are you planning to do to my property and if I'm commercial residence above on pylons above the building, not even touching the store?
You're gonna stay commercial.
What about my residence?
It's gonna stay we're not doing anything to your property. So why are you here? Because you were proposed to be rezoned residentially, but since you and I spoke, you're fine.
I'm almost ready to open my business again.
You're good.
3-car accident.
You are good. Okay. Yes.
David, you've done a fine job.
Thank you.
I have a statement. Gaining from all this conversation is the fact that most of the people, the 750 homes that we're talking about residential, are not insurable. Why can't city council now do something about that, so that in fact, if something does happen to 10 of them with a tornado or whatever might happen, which would be the right thing to do for the city people. Okay, because in 2016, I was never informed of that either, having property in that area. Okay, and because if you have an ordinance, let's say you want to build something or something like that, it needs a permit, and it's out of the ordinary, you can come in front of the board that I sat on. Okay, we used to send out things to the people in that area. That was not done. So therefore, with that said, I think that they need to act immediately, not down the road, after the fact. They need to do it before the fact, so that people can get their homes built. If you do it after the fact, it's 30 days right there without it being passed. Am I making any sense?
No, you're making. That sounds like a very reasonable
think so.
interim
I think it's very logical.
approach.
Practical.
I'll talk with the city attorney about that.
Yeah, I
As
think
soon as tomorrow, I'm going to meet with him tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock.
And this will
Okay.
make, I think, all the residents that have these concerns.
Sure.
I have property there, but it's commercial, it's not residential.
Right.
And I understand the problem. And by the way, David helped me tremendously in a problem I had that hadn't been done with the city for 14 years. No complaints, anything, but they had never done any of the things that they were supposed to have done. In this case, they didn't send out letters to people about this. It was in the papers, that's good enough, and that's not good enough, because not everybody reads the paper. I don't get on a computer. I'm an old timer, and the city does that by computer now. If you don't have a computer to look at it, you don't know.
It's tough.
So I think that really is a good point, and I believe that something should be done about that as soon as possible. Not 5 months, 6 months, 12 months.
George, I agree. If there is a way to put in some type of an interim stopgap to deal with this issue, we'll certainly bring it to the city council and we'll present something to them.
Someone lost their home,
Sure.
for whatever reason, of those
Sure.
750.
If I lived in one of those homes, I would want the same thing.
Oh, Gary, we're just helping to fuel your fire for them.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All in favor?
I got three things. First of all, we bought in July and then we got a notice by, the guy from the French that lives in Canaveral. So, if I'm misunderstanding something here, is if it was originally zoned residential, you could rezone it to commercial and you cannot rezone it back to residential?
Well, what's your address?
The Harbor Oaks behind Wells Fargo Bank over there.
201 International.
Yeah, 201
201
International.
International.
It's right at the bend.
I think that's always been zoned commercial.
Well, how would they allow things to be built then?
Because what happened is, I mentioned earlier, that residential units were allowed to be built in commercial districts through the special
My
exception
point
process.
is, once, can't you revert that back to residential?
That's what we're doing. That's what we're wanting to do, is just change it back to residential.
Thank you.
And this is really our first step in that. I think we talked about a 5-month process.
So Westgate has nothing to do with any of this.
No. Thank you. Yes, sir.
That non-conforming use throughout the city, I think, is a bigger problem than what you're thinking. I mean, everyone, even like that one woman spoke, she lives on Lincoln Avenue, I believe, with the duplex. There's a lot of non-conforming use in the city.
Yeah.
For the city to say to everybody that that is not to be able to be rebuilt, I think that has to be looked at.
Well, we're looking at it. We're looking at it.
Besides the 750, I mean, you're not looking at all the other blocks.
Well,
Like I said, all those duplexes.
really,
If everybody, if that ever gets bad,
the issue is with the commercial properties. We've looked at all the commercial properties in the city. We've identified 750 of them that fit into this situation. So I think this particular.
that actually was put in, and I'm here long enough to know, we didn't want to get rid of the commercial corridor.
We didn't want to.
So nobody wanted to get rid of the commercial.
That's right.
corridor, So we
That's
kept
right.
it down.
Everybody wanted to.
And allowed houses to be built.
That's right. Exactly right.
Without having the distance between, like, what was the setback? Look at
Right.
the houses along that corridor. That was the reason why they thought that somewhere along the line it was going to be commercial.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Flexibility. When I
The
maintain flexibility.
non-conforming area, which, we brushed on real quickly, goes out throughout the whole city. That's the whole city. And if you're saying insurance companies, it's untrue, but unrebuildable, there are a lot of people in the city who are going to be.
We've been, I don't know if any of you knew what the council did about a year ago. We had, how many properties? 70 some, I think. Condo buildings around the city. And this is just not, I think it was 2,000 condo units were over density. And I'm going to sidetrack here just for a second to make a point. The maximum zoning district, residential density we allow in the city is 15 units an acre. We had condo projects, 50, 60, 70 units an acre. Those were all non-conforming. Same thing applied. If they burned down, had a hurricane come in, they were out of luck. Council last year went through and I'm not going to say it's the exact process that we're going through to fix this problem. We went through a similar process. And my point is that there, over time, I'm not going to speak badly. But let's just say there's been some challenges and we're fixing them as quickly as we possibly can.
But
And
how do you fix them if the city okayed the building of them?
Well,
And now you're saying it's not okay. Who are you fixing it for? Not the landowner, certainly.
yeah, definitely. That's exactly. Let me respond. That's exactly.
That's what they're trying to do.
Yeah, they're trying.
Yeah, we're trying. That's why we're here to talk to you folks tonight. Let me respond to that. We're trying to fix this, and we're going to fix it. We're not trying to. We're going to. For the property owners. We're not, I mean, I think I've described the situation pretty well tonight and how we ended up where we are and the fix. And that's what we're here doing. So if you want to come in and talk to me one-on-one, if I'm not communicating clear enough, come in and we'll talk. Yes, ma'am.
We moved down here just about a year ago. If our house burns down, we can't rebuild. So why weren't we told that when we bought it? We wouldn't have bought it if we knew that the house burnt down or something. And we're paying homeowners insurance to redo it.
You live in a single-family home?
We're in a townhouse.
You're in a townhouse. Okay. Well, you know, when a bank or a real estate officer or typical homeowners doing their due diligence on a piece of property, they generally don't dig deep into city zoning ordinances.
Well, it's all residential.
Pardon?
It was all residential.
I don't know, if you're here tonight, if you received a mailer, your property's probably zoned commercial.
Yeah, we are.
But we weren't told that when we bought it.
So, you know, when you buy, just let me interrupt just for a second. Okay, when you bought your property, some people, prospective homeowners, come in and talk to you, like Brenda or I. They kind of go above and beyond what the typical, I hope there's no real estate agents and nothing. Typically, real estate agents, they just, you know, they listen to you. They don't go dig deeper and say, what is this property zone? Is there a home on it that's got to be zoned residential? They don't dig into that. Well, in this situation, that was a
Yeah, but if the city
well,
gave you a CO, then the city's responsible for that building.
as I mentioned.
That's my problem. If the city gives you a CO for something, they're saying they are giving you the CO
Sure.
for this building. You went to them, and not me, whoever went to them.
Well,
You have a CO because you're paying taxes.
sure. I'll go back to the Oak Lane situation. That, yeah, we issued COs on all those, or excuse me, most of those homes on Oak Lane. Those homes were all built through the special exception process. We're not issuing building permits and COs if you're not zoned properly. That's not happening.
Well, this sounds like a process that should take place before that 2016 ordinance.
Okay.
Title insurance, what do they think about all this?
Well, that's Lamar. Okay, I'll get back. Lamar, I don't know if anybody knows, everybody knows Lamar. Lamar's been on our planning and zoning board for 25, 30 years. He's been around forever, so he may have some light to share. No, it's not his fault. Joe, go ahead.
John, I could have answered any of your questions, but I probably shouldn't speak.
We'll fix it. It's our town, our community, we're gonna fix this. Take that. Go, dig up, Lamar. Okay.
Do we have a mic?
Yeah.
Get mic'd up here? Okay. All right. I am Lamar Russell. I am currently the assistant chairman of the Planning and Zoning Board. And I chaired the Planning and Zoning Board for about 35 years during all the time that we have zoned, rezoned, and tried to make our city better. I know how this happened. I'm going to tell you how it happened, lead you through a narrative of how it happened, and then we're going to talk about fixing it. And when I'm done, we're going to get the East Central Florida Council folks up here and let them apply their knowledge to this. And then we're going to walk away here with full knowledge of what we got to do, and we're going to be calm, and we're going to have knowledge that this is our council, this is our city, and we're going to fix this. We've got ways to fix it, okay? Dave knows how to do that. The East Florida Central Council knows how to do that, and we're going to do it. We're just informing you tonight, giving ourselves a chance to air out, and we're going to move forward, and we're going to have clear eye and a sure step, and we're going to fix it. But here's what happened. if you go to this little book, the city has boxes of this thing stored away somewhere, or they used to. They probably give you one if you ask for it. Write this down. Go to page 13 in that book. There are successive zoning maps in this book.
I don't know if Lamar said this, but Lamar wrote this book.
I'm not trying to sell it. I'm just trying to give you information. There are about 6 different zoning maps over 6 different successive rezoning. And I happened to be the guilty party when we did it. I was chairman of the P&Z board, working with the council. But page 13. Page 13 shows the first zoning map that I was able to find in the archives. And it shows the area that you're living in along A1A, 1 block deep to the east, as residential. Once upon a time, it was all residential. So let's put that to bed. Once upon a time, it was residential. I don't have a date on page 13. I have a date on all the rest because I wasn't able to date this one. But it is in the archives, and it's what we worked from. Anyway, the zoning board got busy and tried to get wiser about better zoning methods and using the right boundaries for zoning. And natural boundaries for zoning are streets, rivers, major avenues, you get it. So we looked at that and we said we need to rezone that corridor along A1A, and especially those commercial areas, into commercial. They were residential in the beginning. Remember I said they were residential in the beginning. So we're going to go one block deep and make it commercial. A loud uproar is issued from property owners. Lots of residential property was already there. People were using it for residential already there because it was residential. But we want to try to turn it into commercial and have a commercial corridor, make the city better. Sometimes better ain't. Anyway, lots of those property owners came forward, like you tonight, and they wanted to continue to use their property as residential. Natural. So, in order to give ourselves a chance to develop a commercial corridor along A1A, we said we're going to zone that block deep, 1 block deep into commercial, with the allowance for a special exception to use your property residential by special exception. So those special exceptions slowly washed over the area. And all that area, most of it, a good deal of it, is now residential by special exception. Then somewhere along the line, and here's where I have to plead ignorance, innocent, probably won't help. I was out of the picture. I got an assignment to a foreign country. I worked for NASA then. So I was gone for about a year, and things happened that I wasn't in on. So the property continued to develop. The zoning was still, we had turned it into commercial with residential by special exception. And that's how all those houses and all those occupancy permits were issued. And that's how we got what we got. Then another time in my sojourn, I was out of the picture. So that's, again, my plead for ignorance. The council passed an ordinance to disallow residential by special exception. And it was hoped to be a good thing. Go ahead and wipe out those special exceptions. Let's stop developing as residential along the A1 corridor and let it be commercial forevermore, and let the residential uses slowly wash out of the picture. Trouble is, in zoning, it takes about 50 years for something to wash through and go away. And it didn't go away, so we still got residential. Okay, that's why I'm standing here. I wasn't gonna come down here because I was afraid. No, not really. I've been doing this a long time. But anyway, that's how we got here, okay? But we're going to get out of it. And the council has been working along this line. And there was a time when we had, there's a special story here that Bob was telling me about earlier, that there was a condominium that had excessive residential development already in place over the 15 units. And what do? You don't burn it down, throw it away, grade it under. You put in prescriptive ordinances. And that's what the council did. They went directly to those properties and they gave a prescriptive conforming certificate, or whatever you call it, I don't know its exact name, but made those properties conformant by act of council, okay? Now you can insure them and be protected. The council has been moving in this direction, trying to pick and choose, and David has acquainted you with the fact that we're moving in the direction of fixing this by prescriptive, by zoning, by unzoning, whatever we got to do to protect people's property ownership. So that's where we are today. So without further ado, I'd like to see the East, am I getting your name right? East Central Florida Council, Planning Council?
East Central Florida Regional Planning Council.
We'd like to, I think it's time for us to listen to whatever knowledge and expertise they want to bring to bear on this. And then when this is over, this is going to be referred to the Planning and Zoning Board as an action item to go to work on it, and we'll work with the council. And we'll have some more meetings and some more open forums. Nobody's going to get left out. Keep an eye on the website. Keep yourself informed. So, without further ado, give us your knowledge.
Thank you very much. Can everybody hear me? I'm Fred Milch with the East Central Florida Regional Planning Council. I'm here with John Patterson and Emily Dwowski, who also have been working on this project. I think Dave did a really, really good job addressing a lot of the information and questions that you had. I don't have a whole lot more to answer, to add to that, except we have comment cards, and they're out there, and I have more here. And we also have a board here for people to write their comments on. So what we want to do is solicit your comments. With looking at over 750 properties, there may be mistakes. So we heard about 2 of them right here. We want to make sure that if you have a commercial use going on and you want to remain commercial, that's appropriate. You're not going to be changed to residential. The only other thing I wanted to address, and I really didn't hear, is the reason why you would want to have its own residential was that if your neighbor property burnt down and they were not able to rebuild it as a residential use and its own commercial, you might end up with a car wash right next to your house. I mean, that's the purpose of zoning, is to protect the value of your land and to make it a nice place to live. So I think that's the overriding reason why they want to be able to do that. So with that, the maps are up here for you to look at. The middle, you guys obviously all are impacted. And I also want to commend you, because we go to a lot of public hearings and we get 3 or 4 people maybe. So I'd like to commend you for coming out and voicing your opinion here. So with that, I don't have anything else to add.
Are taking the old dilapidated buildings and turning them into condos. The higher up, you know that if you're in business. Atlanta.
talking about our mixed-use ordinance that we're proposing. I'm gonna say, I believe this is the case. If you're here tonight, your property will be eligible for that mixed-use allowance. So stay really plugged into that, because what that mixed-use allowance is going to do is allow you to have a property, much like this lady here does. She lives upstairs, and she has her business underneath. That's what we call mixed use. So if you have an attorney's office, or a CPA, or whatever you want to do, you can live there, they can live upstairs, or however the configuration is. But that's coming as well. And that's really that's something that's it's a progressive approach. It's something a lot of bigger places are doing.
And they're bringing the people back downtown.
And it's very appealing to. I like to give Brenda a hard time about her generation, but it is very it's very appealing to a lot of people, and that's something that we frankly don't allow today in the city, and that's a shame. So we're going to be.
Just have one brief hypothetical. If, God forbid, something were to happen tomorrow to one of these properties, and it was severely damaged and needed to be rebuilt or whatever, can you imagine that the city council would not go ahead and make an exception because it's intended, that problem is intended to be addressed anyway? Trying to put people's minds at ease.
Yeah, I can't imagine that situation happening. Now, let's just say if a house, again, for discussion purposes, a house burns down. We're gonna have to go through, you have to get plans prepared, you have to bring plans in and get those reviewed and approved, and you have to go out and construct your house. Let's just say that's a 6-month process. I think that's very short. It's probably gonna take more than 6 months to do all that, build the house and do everything else, get a permit. But I promise you, I'm going out in the line, Lynn, your city council, you got my back here, city council. That we would issue a building permit for you to go in and start building your house. And we'd probably tie the issuance to the CO, or certificate of occupancy, which happens on the back end of the project. We tie that to having all this zoning stuff in place, or an emergency ordinance put in place to allow this. So please don't worry about losing a house or not having a place to live. That's not going to happen.
The council will get right on it. Question?
If my townhouse had burnt down last summer, would this have happened? And that goes back to a question that was asked earlier. I'm paying dearly for homeowners insurance. I mean, would it have happened, or have I been paying for nothing? Because that kind of opens the city up to a class action.
Well, I hate playing what-if games, because all kinds of what-ifs, we could create all kinds of scenarios. But in response to your specific question, what would have happened? We would have done something similar to this, what I just described, passing some kind of an emergency ordinance, tying the CO to you moving back into your.
Paying for nothing.
No, what I think I just said was, you would not be
Well, that was future tense. I'm just saying what I've been since the ordinance was changed, and it affected us, or how far it goes back, we'll see.
The ordinance was changed. If I understand correctly, the ordinance did not rezone. The ordinance dismissed the ability to continue to use special exception to develop residential. Your zoning stayed in place. You're still sitting there in commercial, and your insurance should reflect where you are, and it should still be in effect. I can't imagine why it wouldn't be.
No, I'm saying if my place had burned down a year ago, not past this meeting, and it's word of honor that the city council took care of.
Well,
I'm wondering if I've been paying for nothing.
a year ago, the same conditions were in place as they are today.
You're asking if you're paying property taxes for
No, insurance.
Insurance.
Homeowners insurance, if the hurricane had wiped my house out.
Insurance is there to cover the rebuilding of a house, and you would have been able to rebuild the house.
That's all.
Gentleman in the back.
Yeah, we came in late on this.
Thank you.
Need some reiteration of understanding.
sit on your own individual parcel.
That's
So
correct.
you could rezone your parcel without, I don't,
If it burnt down, that'd be another issue.
that's a whole other issue. I don't know what your HOA docs say, or your oh, you know, okay, well, you're good then. You could rezone your specific piece of property without your neighbor's
So you're-
consent, if you want.
So you're arguably 6 months out, right? And I'm hearing now that make sure probably it's intact and I'm covered. Right? So with rezoning for residential, well, this may be an offline discussion.
We're getting into the weeds. Do you have a question? What's the question?
Bear with me, hang in here late. Can I rezone easements as well?
An
Or
easement?
Easements on the
No, I mean, an easement basically is just a right that runs over your parcel. You really don't rezone easements. That basically just runs on top of your land.
Well, I think taxes.
Yeah.
That may be an offline discussion.
Yeah, no, your easements won't be affected at all.
Okay, a lady had a question in the back, and I guess, yeah, there you are. Come forward. Come forward. I'm sure you got a question. We just can't hear it. The acoustics here are not favorable to us without this speaker system. Come up here and talk into this thing with me. We'll keep each other company. Please, we can't hear. If you're going to stand back there and ask a question, we don't hear it. You might as well be talking.
You can go to the podium if you want. There's a speaker up there at the podium, or microphone, excuse me.
Fix the microphone
And if you have a question, step to the microphone.
Okay, thank you. With that little book that you had there, and you said at one time that this area was zoned residential, and then you decided that you were going to bring in some commercial in. My question is, was this brought before the residents of Cape Canaveral to get their input on this, to see how they felt, knowing that this is a possibility? And I'm not saying that you would not, move mountains
Okay,
to help us.
Here's the story. People were sitting there with residential establishments, but the front half of that block, as you drive north along A1A, the front half of that block is commercial. The back half, in a lot of cases, is where the residential starts. So when we started having hearings about this for rezoning, those people who had the residential property showed up. I mean, they weren't secret hearings. We publicize, and we publish, and we send out, and we did the best we could to get the word out. So those people showed up, and they're the ones who drove the requirement for a special exception for residential. They were here.
Okay. I understand. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. All right, gentleman in the wall.
So basically, what you're just saying is that Harbor Oaks, which is the block off A1A, has always been residential.
I don't know where Harbor Oaks is. Hmm?
201 International. 201 International. So that's always been residential.
Well, okay, what's your question?
Has that always been residential, or is that now commercial?
I don't know. Have to see a map. I don't know.
Well, it's a block off.
Some of it.
Right here. Wells Fargo Bank sits right here.
Commercial, like in the middle.
You've always been wrong. You didn't get one, then you're not getting affected.
Okay, folks. Order in the court. It's turned into a private meeting. Please, give us the meeting back. Good question. You'll have to solve that. Discuss it offline. We can't solve it here with the crowd.
Does anybody have any further questions
We don't hear you. We don't hear you. You should come up here.
What about if you have a commercial property that burns down?
You're fine, you're fine.
You can build it.
You're not affected.
Okay, Dave, back to
All right,
you.
I think that's it. Thank you very much for being here tonight. Really appreciate it.
Nice job, Dave.
Good job.
Thank you, Angela.
Yeah,
And,
let's thank the staff, by the way.
and again, give me a holler if you have any questions. Thank you. Appreciate your comments.